So this year for Inktober, I am not gonna do the prompt list. I've kind of hit this point. This would be my 4th year doing it, and I'm just not particularly interested in following somebody else's list of prompts again. I've kind of burned out on the idea of doing a different prompt every single day. I don't know, it just doesn't really appeal to me. But what I do love about Inktober is just doing an entire month of ink, because I really do enjoy working with ink. So I decided that I was gonna take the idea last year where I did one large drawing, and I'm gonna do that again, but this time I'm gonna use more ink wash and incorporate some other techniques and kind of just do it in like a different style, but it's still gonna be a large drawing. When I do Inktober, I usually start with photography as my inspiration, because for years I didn't do any drawing at all. I kind of took like almost 20 years off of that. And for a long time I was doing a lot of photography, and that was actually a great experience for me to work on things like composition, and I used to spend a lot of time doing photo editing, so I really got a good idea of like what good contrast looks like and all of those kinds of things. It's like I start somewhere in the outside taking a photograph that I really like, and then I'm able to kind of transform it into something more with these kinds of drawings. So that's what I'm doing here. For this particular piece, I'm going to use my recent vacation as the inspiration, because I spent a lot of time taking photos. So over the last 2 weeks, we were in Colorado. We went to Pagosa Springs, and that was really cool and fun. And then we went to Denver, and we went to a concert at Red Rocks, which was great. And then on our way back, we stayed by the Vallecito Reservoir, and that was really cool. And we got a whole bunch of rain the entire time, but you know, being from Phoenix, I was actually just really enjoying the rain. So I know that probably sounds nuts, but it was nice actually. On our way back, we went through New Mexico and experienced a whole bunch more like monsoon weather. Then when we got back to Arizona and we drove through Rim Country, we decided to stop in the mountains before we got back to Phoenix to kind of soak up the last little bit of nice weather. And I had an idea that I wanted to use some kind of cool dead tree or gnarled tree or something for this Inktober drawing. So I thought this would be a good spot because ponderosa pines always have a cool look. And if I couldn't find a ponderosa pine, maybe I could find like an alligator juniper. So I took several photos, but this one ended up being the one that really spoke to me, this particular tree. And part of what I liked was the angle that I got in this photo. So I took a couple other photos that were more straight, more aligned, all of that kind of thing. But this one in particular, there's a certain amount of chaos that goes really well with the chaos happening in the limbs here. I just love those gnarled limbs. All the ponderosa pines have them, and they're just something special. So this one had a really dramatic set of limbs, and they weren't all covered in leaves, which made it better for the photograph. Also, we were there during the late afternoon sun, which really kind of gave a good drama. But I also, this one in particular, I was able to get an angle that just looms over you. And I did decide for my final composition that I'm not going to correct the lens distortion in any way. I like that lens distortion. It kind of gives something cool in my opinion. So I certainly know how to do that in Photoshop, but I don't feel like it always benefits the picture. It just depends on what you're trying to do. So after that, on our way back home, we also got just, oh my God, the best Arizona sunset. And you know, usually I prefer sunsets that have some clouds. I think they usually have more color and more interest in them. But this particular sunset, we were driving down the highway, and it's just everywhere we drove by on the highway, it was perfectly placed in these cool like little crevices in the mountains. It was just right. It was just like the best. I don't know why. And like, I think the air was kind of dirty. I don't know if it was dust or smoke or what was in the air, but something was giving it that kind of extra layer of refraction that really gave it some good color too. I had all sorts of really pretty pictures from that sunset, but this one in particular, I like the rock formations in here. So I took both of those and I put them into this drawing. So this is what the final, like this is the final composition, the final drawing I'm gonna use. But I'll show you what it looks like on the inside. So here's the inside of the drawing. So obviously I made it black and white. So when you're working with black and white, you really have to go in and mess with the contrast to make it look good as a black and white photo. So I'm going to show you what it originally looked like. So this is the original photo when I hadn't done any alterations to it. And this is what the original photo looks like if you just turn it black and white. See how it's just kind of boring and dull? And interestingly, you can also see where the phone camera automatically adds a little bit of extra contrast in certain places to make it stand out against the sky. So as you can see, that's not very exciting. And this is pretty much what happens to most photos unless they just have like a ton of contrast already. So like master photographers know how to create that before they take the photo, you know, but you can't really do that out in the wild. So then what you have to do is you have to go in and make a bunch of changes. So on here, first I did the levels on the trunk, and then I did the levels on the rest of it. And then I got rid of some of the extra brightness that was happening down here because of what I was planning to do next. Now I took the background away here so I could show you. I knocked out the background that was originally there. So then I could put in some of that sunset. So this is what it looks like with that sunset in there. And I feel like that really adds something that creates like a much cooler picture. And then I'm trying to think if I did anything else. Not really anything else of note. So I'm gonna close this out. So now if you go back, you can see this was me mocking up what it's gonna look like inside a frame. I actually have a frame that's this set of dimensions already that's been sitting around in my closet for a million years. So I'm actually pretty pleased I'm gonna get to use it. It's 36 inches tall. So it's kind of like a tall mirror that you would have like on the back of your door or something. It's like about that size. And I'm planning to put it next to my piano. So I'm pretty excited about it. The plan is that I'm going to do a lot of the line work with Pitt pens because those are India ink pens. Now I had thought for a little bit about maybe doing dip pen, but I decided it was going to be just too much in a really big drawing like this, and it was going to cause me a lot of frustration and wasn't going to have the precision that I wanted. But the downside about using Pitt pens as opposed to a dip pen is that you don't have that like really nice line variation that you can get. I do have the Pitt brush pens that I could use for part of it, so I might kind of play around with alternating between the fine liners and the brush pens. I have all different sizes. I have down like the super fine sizes, and I have like the big brush pen too. So I'm going to use all of that. And the other thing that I'm going to use is ink wash. I'm going to use my Speedball Indie ink, and I'm going to use that for filling in things like the sky and these mountains and any places where you have kind of like those shades of gray. That was the downside about the drawing I did last year. I love all the texture that it creates when you do all that hatching with pen, but it is really hard to get like anything smooth. So I feel like I'm gonna have the best of both worlds this time, or that's the goal. Now I'm also gonna show you, these were some of the other ideas I had. So there's this one, which I love this, but I don't think that this is right for Inktober. I actually do think I'm going to probably draw this one in my sketchbook, and I might even add like more line drawing elements to it and make it like really stylized because it just seems like a lot of fun. It's the same tree, as you can tell. And this, yet again, is the same tree. I did something completely different with this one. See how the difference when it's like straight and aligned in the composition and not this kind of chaotic looming over me and a little bit crooked look to it. I added, this was there was a really cool moonrise that happened when we were in Denver that I added to the background of this one. And I tried to add it to the other one, but really the sunset just looked better. So this one's cool, but it just doesn't speak to me in the same way. Okay, so let me show you what I've been doing here. So you might recognize these jars. I had mixed these up when I was doing Inktober a couple years ago. So I number them by darkness. So this is like the pure undiluted India ink. And then each one of these is just a little bit more diluted. And I usually just keep these going the entire month, and it's just a lot easier than remixing it every time. And I will point out that I live in Phoenix, and the water here is very hard and very, very heavily treated with chlorine, like you can smell it. So I've never had a problem with the ink molding, but I'm pretty sure that's why. So I do hear that some people have problems with that. So I will say though, after this month is over, I do dump the jars and clean them because I don't, if they sit in there long enough, it'll actually just dry out. So, and then it's harder to get out of there. And so here's what I've got going on. So I've been playing around. This is just cheap Canson XL watercolor paper, by the way. When I do my actual drawing, it's going to be on the Strathmore 500 mixed media paper that I like to use. And it is a lot more forgiving when it comes to things like blooms. Those happen really easily with India ink, and especially on this paper in particular. It's great if you want that effect, but really frustrating if you don't. On this side, I drew the lines with Micron pen. So I was just messing around, kind of sketching my phone, like this was just me playing around. And I wanted to see if the Micron pen would play nicely with India ink as far as color was concerned. And I seem to remember that Micron pen had kind of like a more bluish tone of black, and the India ink had a more reddish tone of black. And I am seeing that when I look at it. And I also noticed that like Micron pen is kind of like a thinner ink. And sometimes that's really nice because it can make things really smooth, but it doesn't stand out well when you're using India ink with it. And I was also playing around with the idea of putting like some words in here and stuff. And I think I'm going to leave that out of this Inktober drawing. I think I'm going to leave that for something else. So I didn't love this on this side. So that's when I decided to do something different. So on this side, I used the Pitt pens, and those, like I said before, are India ink. I use those, and then I use the Speedball ink wash with it. And I think you can see that the tones go together much better. So I think that's the final combination. Now, this was what I did with the pens, and I was playing around with writing in there with the white Jelly Roll pen, which the white is too cool. I don't like it, so I won't be using that one if I need to touch up things. And that's a good thing to know. It just doesn't match the white of most of the papers, are a little bit warmer. And so over here, I actually used dip pen with the Speedball ink, and I ran into the same problem that I had forgotten I had before, so I'm glad I tested that. The Pitt pens dry faster. They're India ink, and the Speedball is India ink, but the Pitt pens, I can usually put ink wash over them almost immediately, whereas the Speedball usually has to sit and dry for at least 15 to 20 minutes, sometimes more. And so you can see right here that it actually started to smear, and it did it like over here too. And so part of it's just because I think it applies more thickly, but that was another good reminder of why I probably don't want to do that on a large scale drawing. So I think I'm sticking with the Pitt pens and the Speedball ink wash. So the next thing I'm going to do is some experiments on the actual paper I'm going to be using, but I'll be doing it like in a sketchbook. One thing that I also want to practice right now is trying to figure out how to get a wash on a really large area without having it look bad. So I'm going to work on practicing that. I'm also going to figure out which brushes I'm going to use for that. I'm going to see how much of a problem it potentially might be on that paper. It's just like with the ink wash, the second you get it down, there's not a lot you can do to go back and fix it. It's not like, it kind of stains pretty quickly. It's not like watercolor where you have a little bit of time to play with it sometimes. Ink wash is not like that. So you got to pretty much get it down right the first time, and that's just it. So yeah, it's a little bit scary. So I need to figure out what potential pitfalls I'm going to run into and if I'm okay with those, or if I need to think about it and figure out a better way to mitigate that. So right now I'm doing a bit of experimenting for Inktober, just playing around with ink wash, kind of playing with the paper, seeing what I can do with the pens and seeing if they like smear or anything like that. And I've realized something. So I have this this is probably 3 or 4 years old, this PBO drawing gum that I have. And, it's like, so you open it up and it started to dry out. And you notice how it's kind of like getting that kind of greenish color? It's like discoloring. I don't know if it's like drying out or if it's got contamination or what's happening. But I've noticed that when I'm applying it to things, it's behaving strangely. Like when I peel it off, it seems to be not peeling off cleanly, and it seems to be kind of almost staining the paper yellow. So I don't know, maybe like the latex in there is like degrading. I'm not really sure exactly what's going on, but I didn't really realize how much of a problem it was until I peeled the drawing gum off of here, this moon, and that was supposed to be white like the paper, and it sure has like a yellow cast. So I'm doing a test right now. So this is a brand new container I bought like a month ago. I'm gonna use the old one here, and then I'll let them dry and I'll come back and peel them off and see if there's really like paper staining happening, and also just to see like what the difference is between new and old. I don't know how long these are supposed to last for, but I mean, clearly I need to throw this other one away. Now I'm just curious, honestly, because I have the new one and it's like, this is like mostly gone anyway. So it's not like I'm trying desperately to hang on to it, but now I'm just kind of wondering what's going on. So this is like my little chemistry experiment, I guess. We'll see. So I want to point out, even though this wasn't on camera, when I did this one, it was very watery, far waterier than this one. And I didn't realize how watery it used to be. So that was interesting. Now I'm using a ruling pen to do this, which is pretty cool. I like ruling pens. The only complaint I have about using them for this kind of a thing is that sometimes they can kind of like scratch into the paper, so you have to be careful. So look at that. Look at the color difference between the two. Ugh, I do wonder if this one's contaminated. And then like, it's definitely thicker, quite a bit thicker. And I mean, like, it's like almost gone in there. So yeah, now this is just kind of morbid curiosity, to be honest with you. I'm kind of purposefully scratching this a little bit just to see. I did the same on the other one. So I'm gonna come back in a while and try that out and see what happens. Okay, it's been just a little over 2 hours. So one thing I noticed is that this one is just a lot stickier than the other, which is interesting. I don't know if they've changed anything or not. Okay, so this is like actually meant for removing masking fluid. But with this old masking fluid, I've noticed that it just kind of sticks to it in like a weird way and doesn't really work very well. So I'm curious to see if the other one works better. So let me start with this one. Oh yeah, it definitely does. So I definitely think that the product has broken down over time, this old one. Yeah, look at that, it's so easy. Okay, it doesn't leave any kind of color that I can see. All right, try this one. See how it's not coming off cleanly? Isn't that weird? What is happening? It's not the way it's supposed to be at all. It does look like it's staining the paper. That's so weird. Oh, that's... Ugh. Oh my god. This does not give me confidence for what I did over here and having this actually come off. Ugh, god. I'm kind of dreading that now. Good thing this was just for practice, huh? Oh my god, look, it's like yellow. Like, look at this. What is happening? Oh my god. Blech. That is really gross. Wow. Yeah, so I guess that's good to know that this masking fluid definitely has like an expiration date that is before it just dries up. That is just, ugh. Gross. It's all like sticking to my tool too. Like getting it off of there is gonna be hard. I'm gonna have to like wash it or something, I don't know. Oh my god. Ugh. This is like really nasty, honestly. Yeah, that's what I used here and here. Oh god. I'm really not excited about having to remove that later. This is insane. Yeah, look at it. Oh, look at how yellow it is. Oh, that's disgusting. Oh my god, that's like so gross. It's like snot. It's really, really nasty. Well, I guess the moral of the story is if your masking fluid has been sitting a long time, you should probably test it out before you use it on anything you really care about. So that is getting thrown away for sure. Oh my god. Ugh. Okay, it is September 25th, and I am flattening out my paper. So I'm using the Strathmore 500 mixed media paper again. And I've cut it and rolled it out, and then I sprayed it with a little bit of distilled water, and now it's going to sit for at least 24 hours to flatten. And my plan is to put it in this frame that I've had forever. So as you can see, it's a panoramic frame, 36 inches long. And I'm going to use these frame spacers in there instead of a mat. That's the plan. You know, I've learned that I shouldn't rely on that. So for the paper, I've actually cut it to be 2 inches larger than this in every direction. So it's actually about the size of the real frame instead. And that way, if I need to mat it and put it in a different frame, I'll be ready to go. Kind of hope not, because I really want it to fit in a very specific spot that this frame fits in, but you know, we'll see. So while I'm waiting for that paper to dry and flatten, I've been doing a lot of prep work here. So if you see on this page, I've been playing around with different whites that I could use. So we have the one that I've used here before, this Maltau refill. And that is basically just acrylic paint. It's like a semi-gloss acrylic paint. It's really opaque though, which is what I've always liked about it. And it's thin, so because it's meant to be used in a pen. So it works pretty well, but the downside is that this paper has a cream color to it. So when you use it on top of something like this, it starts to look a little bit bluish. It doesn't really quite match the tones of everything else that's going on, especially since that Speedball India ink has kind of a red cast to it. And then the next one I've tried out was the Sennelier shellac-based ink. And that one goes all right. That actually isn't too bad. I'm still deciding whether or not I'm going to use that one. The golden white is very opaque, and of course it's golden. Now this is, I'm using a high flow acrylic. And I was pretty, you know, that's pretty good for like a straight white, but as usual, it's that titanium white, so it's whiter than the paper. And then this one is the titanium buff. And this one, you know, kind of, if you have a light coating of it, works pretty well to match that color of the paper. Like I actually, on these little stems in here, I actually use that color in a very light coating on top of some titanium white. And that seems to work pretty well. So right here, I'm actually going to do a very small drawing of the actual drawing I'm going to do for Inktober. So these were both just practice, just to see what I could do and kind of get ideas. So that's my next goal. And then I'm hoping by the time that paper is flat that I will have made some decisions. I'm going to go in and pencil sketch the main drawing, and I'm not going to get like all perfect about it. I'm not going to put the grid in there or anything because this is just for experimentation. So I'm going to draw that in. I'm going to use the new masking fluid and get all that ready and then let them dry for a while before dinner. Okay, so I feel pretty good about the way this one is headed down here. I'm tipping it a little bit because when you use that India ink, it has like a sheen, especially in this bright light. Yeah. So I used the Sennelier shellac-based ink as a first layer for the white highlights, and then I went in with that Titan Buff golden high flow acrylic and kind of glazed over those a little bit just to give them a closer color. And then actually in the sun here, I didn't feel like it was bright enough. I felt like the white of the paper just wasn't quite as bright as I wanted. So I actually did just use the Sennelier ink just on the sun. And I think that worked pretty well. I'm pretty happy with that. There were a few spots where I left the white, and you can kind of see how that white of the paper compares, and I think it makes sense in this context. So yeah, I think this is going to look pretty cool as a larger drawing. Now what I'm going to do, let's see, it is the 27th, by the way, so we're getting up to the wire here. What I'm going to do now is I'm actually, on this next page, I'm going to do a zoom in. So I'm going to do it at real size, one little small section of the picture, so I can play around with like what kind of level of detail I want to add or do not want to add. If I want to kind of play around with the line work a little bit and make it a little less, you know, like an exact copy, and do some other interesting things maybe that you can only see up close. I don't know. So I'm just going to mess around now. That's my goal. But I feel good about my choice of using this particular picture. Now you'll notice that I kind of mangled the shape of the tree a little bit. I wasn't really trying to make it perfect, but these trees are not ever perfect anyway, so I kind of feel like I have a lot of room to play with it. So when I do the final drawing, I will probably still play around with it also. This was my final set of experiments before getting started. I'm going to turn off this light because I think it's reflecting a lot. There we go. What I did was I did some drawings that were actually to scale, like little sections of the drawing. So this is the one that I'm kind of working off of here. And then this is this to scale parts. So now that I've done that, I'm actually ready to truly get started, which works nicely because it's the 28th. So my next step will be drawing a grid on my paper so that I can start sketching it out. And part of the challenge here is that I have this 40-inch long piece of paper. I did get a piece of gator board that is about 32 by 40, which is all well and good when I'm drawing sideways, but of course this is a vertical drawing. So I'm going to draw out the grid on this sideways, and then I'm going to have to use this aluminum field easel I have when working on it vertically, because this table easel I have just won't get tall enough. So it's going to be interesting.